Right then, well, thank you for just agreeing to be part of my day 9 video. So this is almost like a part 2, right? So I posted today about don't get distracted by the quotas, please, people. And the point I was making is that, one, we've had this conversation before. We've been having this conversation before. And you know, it was a good opportunity for me to say, look, I get the purpose behind quotas. I've never been a fan of quotas because of the unintended consequence of quotas. Now, and we can get into some of that because you guys had some really good points about that. And then the second thing is, with all of this stuff around, you know, Black Lives Matter, like it's very, very important. But if we're not careful, we trivialize it by focusing on tokenistic gestures of we're taking this matter seriously. And I guess I get frustrated when I'm seeing lots of people list out, you know, companies that don't have Black executives, that don't have, you know, these sorts of people on boards and whatever else it is. And I'm a bit like, that's the symptom, not the cause. But what I don't see is the same level of conversation about what has led to the fact that there are not those Black or even brown people on boards, right? So that's where I'm kind of coming from. So I posted my video, you know, said what I said. All my videos should really come with a disclaimer that said I said what I said. So I said what I said. Yep. And then you, Leanne, came on your soapbox and went, right, that's what you got to say, which we'll come to. Then Sabah was like, yeah. Yeah, join in. So then I said, okay then, girls, you clearly got something to say, so let's almost bring this, because you made some really good points that I wasn't even thinking about when I was objecting to this whole conversation about quotas. So I thought, let's bring us together, and I'm happy and keen to do more of this. I guess my thing is, I only want to do it with people that I feel like are going to give a real level of conversation, because I, you know, in the nicest way possible, I'm not interested in the academic textbook, this is what we've been talking about before type talk around this subject. You know, which is why some other people have tried to kind of engage me and draw me into that. And, you know, I've done some things and it's kind of worked but not worked. So, but I knew, because I've followed all your posts and all your comments, Sabah, so, and I know Leanne, so that's fine. But, you know, I've followed all your posts and I thought, yes, you've clearly got something to say. And the beautiful thing about this is that it elevates what can just be what I call Twitter fingers. So, you know, you end up just like typing, and it doesn't have the same impact as being able to have a conversation. So that's the context. So I'll hand over to you first, Sabah, and just to introduce yourself, say hi, you know, what's your angle in all of this. We'll do the same thing with Leanne, and then we'll just go for it.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think just thank you for putting out the videos and saying what you say, because it's interesting when you're an underrepresented group, you don't give yourself that power to do that. I have been in the HR profession for I think almost 16 years now. I've worked in Dubai, India for a little bit, and then I moved to the UK 2 years ago. I actually resigned my contract and left last year because, you know, as a race equality lead, I could just see that it was a lot of talk, but it was no real commitment behind it. And I think for me, I just reached that stage in my career where I thought, you know what, I'd rather do something on my own. I'd rather not earn money. I'd rather do free stuff, but do meaningful, useful stuff. I'll find a way for my voice to count. But I just can't stay in corporates anymore because I've done it for so long and had to fight justifying why, you know, having exclusionary policies, procedures, behaviors, approaches to work and managing of people is just so damaging that it actually creates more problems than it's meant to solve. So I am basically working as a consultant. I'm doing a lot of projects now with a really lovely gentleman who's originally from Nigeria, but, you know, moved to America, setting up his own, you know, his own consultancy business, but also a non-profit to get more inclusion information out there. And one of the things I realized was that all our inclusion information is usually US specific, or there's a little bit UK stuff out there, but Asia is way behind in its journey. South Asians are extremely behind in their journey. And we don't have a global space where we can learn about each other's backgrounds, cultures, and so on. So the project I'm working on now is with a gentleman called Joseph Nwoye, and we're literally both just working for free because we just want to kind of get this platform built and knowledge available to everybody, and just get our experiences to create some awareness and get people just doing better, basically. So yeah, I want to use my voice better, and that's pretty much where all my frantic typing and getting my voice more out there is coming from, because I've been silent for too long, and it's just like, yeah, I want to be exactly like you. I said what I said. Let the pieces fall where they may.
I got somebody said, "Oh my God, you can copyright that." I was like, "No, I got it from Nene Leakes." So we got to give credit to the original. We've got to give credit to the original Nene Leakes. And over to you, Leanne.
To be perfectly honest, Shereen, you got me on the soapbox with the word quota. That's what really ticked me off. Not the topic, I mean, not Shereen, but the topic. Quotas for me are always so divisive, just because I feel like they are a numerical solution for a human problem. It's easy to put maths into everything and say, hey, we were up this amount of people last year. Before we only had 5% Black, Asian and ethnic minorities, and now we've got 10%. That's great, but why is it only that small? And the comment that I made today is, why is the assumption always that we're only good enough once everybody says, but what the hell's going on here? I kind of feel a little bit like all this kind of quota, black quota stuff that's going to come around is like the racist person who says, hey, I have a black friend. You actually don't have a black friend, you have a black acquaintance. They're actually not good enough to be your friend, but they get called friend in a useful situation, which is now. You would never really put them on the same level as your real friends, but now they're a friend because everyone's gone, well, you're racist. No, I'm not, because Johnny there is my black friend. And that's what I feel about quotas. They're very, very useful to hide behind, to say, yeah, we're improving because now we have X, Y, Z. But the thing is, why weren't we relevant before? There are loads of black people who are massively qualified on paper, so why aren't they getting through the door? And it was even something that I saw on Instagram where a woman says her name is Charmaine, but it wasn't spelled the traditional way, it was spelled differently. And she's like, I was so ashamed of putting my name on my CV. And that's the point. Are we being judged before the CV's even, or before, as soon as our CV lands on the desk and it says Charmaine? Yeah. I mean, my name is Leanne, and my mum specifically, she liked the name, but she also did think about the CV consequences. So it's all of that stuff kind of going together. What sits behind these assumptions? We talk about unconscious bias, but what makes them fundamentally believe that Black and ethnic minorities aren't capable on a daily basis, apart from when it's quota time? So that's why I kind of got inflamed when Shereen said quotas today, because it's one of my biggest bugbears.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I mean, I've my experience working the last 2 years in higher education in the UK was, I put it mildly, disappointing. It was disappointing because, I've been the international student 20 years ago studying in the UK, and it's only now hitting me what attainment gaps mean to a person. It's only now hitting me that, I rarely ever saw Black and brown professors. It's only now hitting me that when I needed support and I was feeling, the culture shock hit me, that there was no one like me or even close to me in terms of skin tone that could get my cultural and social background. So I was given very white solutions to problems that, they just didn't understand. They were too complex. And I think for me, with the quota bit, why it gets me is because the last 2 years I've spent every day having everything that's come out of my mouth, that I've written on paper, that, I've said in support of anything, inclusion, HR, stuff that I have experience of, everything's been questioned. And I know the place that I was working in is not like London, you know. So Lincoln is a microcosm within the UK, and is a very peculiar and a very particular place, very predominantly white. But I think a place like that really brings into highlight why, just because you hired a brown race equality officer, don't give yourself a pat on the back, because actually, you know, maybe month one was great. And then you said, oh, we'll include you in you know, recruitment videos, and we'll do this and we'll do that. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is good. Like, this is an improvement over my last crappy experience. This is great. So I'm in a good space. So you get me when I'm in a good space. And by month 2 or 3, it's really sinking in that I'm just being used as a token here to, you know, show that we're diverse. And you've got me on all the good stuff. Now I can't back out. So now I'm in a difficult position. Now the reality is hitting me, because the love goggles are coming off the first 3 months, as in any relationship, you know, and you're seeing the reality. And it's just getting worse and worse, but you can't speak up because, you know, you're the only brown person or the other brown person in the entire team. And nobody gets where you're coming from. And it's the problem with you being called a diversity hire. You know, my first role in Lincoln, and I know I had the experience, and I was told, because the manager happened to be brown, I was, you know, the rumor that went around this little university was that, oh, she's been hired because she's brown, because, you know, he's brown, she's brown, they must know each other. And it's like, no, just because we're brown, all brown people don't know each other. Like, you know, I've never met him before in my life. Why would you assume that about me? Why don't you look at my CV? Why don't you trust that I went through a meritorious, fair evaluation system? So you can never beat that. And I think this is why quotas can be damaging, because while you shouldn't have to make a case for why it should be more representative in HR or in a board or in leadership, this should just be common sense. You know, I appreciate where Matt Hancock might be coming from, but like, really, it's not about diverse thought, because if everybody was so diverse in their thinking, we wouldn't have half the problems we have today. You know, it's easier said than done to think inclusively. And I speak as a South Asian, so I know the conversations I have to have in my own spheres around the Black community. I know how much pushback I have to do to educate people, to tackle stereotypes that exist even in the South Asian community. So quotas aren't going to fix anything. They're a patchwork, half-baked effort to kind of go, oh, here, look, we did something. We got a brown face. We got a Black face. My question is, can they speak openly? Can they speak freely? Can they express what they're actually thinking? Are they afraid of being shot down and of being let go? Are they afraid that they need to, if they don't behave like the model minority, that you're not going to include them anymore? Because I've experienced this firsthand, and that's what happens when you start speaking up and you start saying the truth. And when you start saying, you know what, you need to take a different non-traditional approach to inclusion. The Black staff and student members, they suffer much more. So I'm going to prioritize my activities this way. But actually, a white HR director may not always understand why that's the case, because for them, equality equals equity. So they don't understand. So I was asked, but equality and equity, they're the same thing. And it's like, no, they're not the same thing. They're completely different. You cannot take a one-size-fits-all approach, because within BAME, and if I take the example of Lincoln, you have the Black community which suffers the most. There's not even shops for people to go and get their hair done. There's no places to eat. Even kids coming from London suffer because it's just too white. It's too much of a contrast that they can't cope with culturally. There's no support systems in place. The Asian community, smaller, but has a little bit more going for it. And so when you look at, you know, just the needs of the two communities, you cannot just plug them all as BAME, because they struggle with different things at different levels. And so it's so easy in inclusion practice, and for particularly HR teams that are very white, to say, oh, we're tackling BAME, this is too complex, so we've simplified it. Very colonial approach. Let's simplify the complex into what we can understand, put a label on it, and to go, yeah, fix that. You know, white minorities struggle. They struggle with similar levels of racism as Black and brown minorities in Lincoln, underrepresented groups in Lincoln. And it's striking to me that nobody breaks this data up, you know? So you imagine the situation's worse if you don't break the data up, because you're trying to, you know, compile these complex experiences into one solution, which the solution is going to be wrong because it's not going to work for everyone. And when you look at intersectionality, you know, somebody who's Black and disabled has a completely different experience of life to somebody who is white and disabled, somebody who's brown and disabled. They'll be, you know, challenged on different levels, socially, culturally, mental health wise. So you cannot have the same solution for everybody. But I just think, you know, this is what stands out for me, is that we haven't decolonized our approaches. We're always going with, let's label this and get a simple strategy. And we're always focusing on outcomes, but not on what the root cause of the problem is. Why are we in this place to begin with? You know, and I think for me, that's where we need to go.
Yeah, and that's where I talk about, you know, digging in the roots rather than shaking the tree and rustling the leaves, because what I'm still seeing is a lot of people still coming with the same arguments that we made to get diversity and inclusion on the table in the first place. What we did, and, you know, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Upon reflection, you go back and you go, did we make it too easy to marginalize D&I because we try to talk the language of the business, get them to sign off on taking this approach in the first place? Do you know what I mean? So we cut the stats. We gave the economic arguments about, you know, how it adds, you know, blah blah blah, that, you know, 5%, 20%, whatever else it is. We looked at Harvard Business Review and all their stuff that they've done. We looked at all of, you know, all the reports that you can find there, and we went, right, this is the economic argument. And whilst a lot of people for a long time have said, like we've heard it, you know, don't go on the moral argument for D&I, go on the business case, right, the commercial business case, which you can do. But the problem is with the commercial business case, to your point, it doesn't address, you know, I keep talking about it's these systematic inequalities that are woven in, just built on. So what we see in society is manifested in these businesses, and it's woven in. And so if we are not consciously trying to extrapolate all of these little pieces, you know, every single decision that a business makes, and try to look at it through a lens of, you know, what's the experience like if you're the majority, whatever, what is the experience of your like if you're minority, how does that work, you know, then it becomes very, very, you know, it becomes very, very challenging. And my issue with quotas, look at this now, this child wants to, okay, come and take the child, please.
Can I say something?
How are you?
Can I say something to your point, Shereen?
Oh, she's so funny.
Yes, if I can get rid of the child.
Oh gosh.
You can.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, going back to loads of the things that you've been talking about, especially in having uncomfortable conversations, there's so much of a focus on unconscious bias. I think people have to be pushed into being uncomfortable to make what is unconscious conscious. It is a really, am I allowed to say piss poor?
Yeah.
It's
You said it, it's too late.
Yeah, true. I think it's a piss poor excuse to say this is the reason why I can't, because there's so much unconscious bias. Well, scrap it. Look at how you react. How do you react when you see 3 black men on the street? Do you get scared? Do you cross the road? What is that telling you about your own behavior? How do you feel when you look at a name that says, no offense to any Shaniquas, but if her name's Shaniqua, have you gone any further than her name? It's like, push yourself into being uncomfortable and push yourself into saying, I'm going to consciously look at myself and think about the decisions I make and the impacts. But that goes back to the point of the unconscious bias is the easy way out, just like I don't know what to say is the easy way out. And I think that's where, as you said, Sabah, that's also where non-traditional methods have to be implemented, because it's no longer enough to have all of these passive excuses. There has to be a level of responsibility and a level of being active to make a change. You can't hope for change. You have to mobilize change. You have to galvanize it. And, you know, I know it sounds a little bit trite, but how does a pearl comes out, a beautiful pearl comes out of pain. It is not nice, the formation of a pearl. And this is the same thing. It's got to be uncomfortable. It's got to be painful, because there's been so much passivity that's been allowed. There's been so many numerical targets, KPIs. Are we doing well at this? Check, check, check. But what does that mean? What does that mean for the person who is the only black face in the office, who's having a problem with a racist boss and has nowhere to turn? And in doing so, you know, when people poo-poo the idea that you're experiencing racism because you're the black person with the chip on your shoulder, what do you do then? Yeah, you might have one person black now when they weren't there last year, so you've got 100% improvement. But how does that person live? You can't say, okay, my unconscious bias, or I don't know what to say, oh, I don't know what to do. There has to be activity and no more passivity. And I think that's what people have been keen to avoid. And I think a lot of us have also been keen to avoid saying anything, as you said before, Shereen. We don't want to rock the boat, because that's the scariest part of the whole thing.
And I think it's that sorry, Sabah, you go.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's just this, it's really difficult to try and articulate to people who don't understand what it's like when you are the only black person in a particular space, or the only minority in a particular space. But let me focus on black people, because, you know, my focus is on black people. But it just doesn't cross their mind how you're always on your guard. Do you know what I mean? Because you can never relax. You know, you can never relax.
It's weaponized.
It's what? Sorry, darling?
So what you're saying, when you're always on your guard, in fact, what I've realized that is weaponized against you. And this is what I experienced firsthand and I thought, wow, if stuff is that bad for me and I'm in a role, imagine people who have no access, no influence, are in no positions of power, because, you know, it's used against you by people who have the privilege of not having to become uncomfortable because they don't want their boat rocked, because everything's good from their perspective, right? Why would they want to understand your or my lived experience? Because it's so much easier to say it's just your lived experience. You must be, you know, experiencing this way. Oh, you're in this job, so you see everything from this perspective. Oh, you're really passionate about inclusion, diversity, so of course you're more aware of it. Maybe you're misinterpreting what you're, you know.
Gaslighting. That's called gaslighting.
Yeah.
That's called gaslighting. Yeah. You know, I will do one video just on that subject, but that's called gaslighting. And you know, and that's the thing. And I think what people forget, and particularly white people who I'm having this conversation with, is, you know, absolutely, you do want to treat people equally. But guess what? You can only treat people equally when they are equal. In society, we are not equal. So even by the definition of treating everybody equally, those who are not equal will never be equal, because they never get, and that's the point, that's the difference between equity and equality. And it's amazing how many very senior people still do not understand the difference. They do not understand the difference. So then, and even now, despite, you know, everyone, you know, clearly everyone's now reacting. I do think this is a little bit, it's a box where the lid has been lifted off. I'm not sure we can put it back on. So to all those people out there who are hoping this will be a phase and it will pass, no, I don't think it will. And I don't think it will, because I think what we've all realised is, it's a little, you know, and I keep saying it, but I do liken it to the Me Too movement. When you think you're the only person experiencing it, or, you know, like there's a small group of you experiencing it, in your mind you're thinking maybe it's not as bad, because if it was bad, everyone would be talking about it, and it isn't. And now what we're seeing, and what I am encouraging people to do, is to start sharing their experiences and sharing their truth in all of the rawness and the ugliness, because some of the stories are just downright ugly of how people, you know, how people are treated. But you can't unsee that. We can't then go, you know, I recognise, you know, Sabah, you and I probably would have never have connected in a month of Sundays. This is the beauty of the the online world, right? Because you can find all these people that are as passionate and outspoken as you are. Leanne and I have been friends for years, and she's in Munich. So, oh my God, try being black Try being black in Germany. Try being black in Munich. Do you know what I mean? That needs a show on its own. That needs a whole piece all by itself. Because that's just crazy. But, you know, so what I'm trying to say to people is that this surface level conversation, whether it's about quotas, whether it's about, you know, oh, but we do, like I've had people go, no, but let me list the things that we do. We do blind hiring. You know, we do this. Let me not swear. Jesus, please take the wheel. Let me not swear. But that's the point. They are not digging into the roots of this, because by definition, they're like, but we do all of this great stuff. And I'm going, okay, well, if you've done all of this great stuff and it's worked so well, so how many black people do you have in your business, by the way? Well, you know, we've been doing all this stuff. And how many black speakers do you have if you're doing an event? You know, I have people that, and not to say that, you know, I'm not good at what I do, etc., but they go, no, we didn't pick you just because you were black. And I go, okay then, but why am I the only black person then? That's what gets me really annoyed. Why am I the only black person? Why in London? And will I go to an event and be the only black person? Why am I the only black person on a panel?
Or lots of the diversity and inclusion conferences where there's hardly any black people on. There's actually, at least the 3 I went to last year, nobody black on the panel. Nobody brown on the panel. Like, you know, it's like, is it not enough that I get talked to the majority of my life within white spaces and in white ways, that I need to not be able to see anyone even remotely in my sphere of reference somewhere important who's speaking up, you know? And I think that's the really frustrating bit, is because the conversation, and particularly this in, you know, I think in private companies, it can still be a little bit more mutable because you can try and push those boundaries. But in higher education, you get academic arguments all the time. And it's very hard to keep pushing back, because they want to get lost in the numbers and challenge your argument on numbers. So the focus constantly shifts. So it's like pushing against, you know, brick wall all the time. And higher education has the power to influence what people learn right from a very young age, right through university, what history they're learning, what they're getting exposed to, what ideas they adopt, what biases they adopt, what gets challenged, what doesn't get challenged. So for me, it's really, really challenging to constantly have to say, you know, qualitative data is also data. Why are you not collecting it as an HR person or as an organization?
And that's exactly, and Sabah, that's exactly what I did. That's exactly what I did, you know, and I stand by that when people go, oh, but you know, your argument would be more powerful if you had statistics. And I go, yeah, but we've been using statistics for years to justify the argument, and nobody's getting it. So if I've got to tell you some real stories about some behaviors in a business and what that looks like, what I call passive racism looks like. So the same people that are jumping up and down and going, I'm not racist, the same goddamn people. And I'm thinking to myself, listen, don't let me be airing out your shit, because I can give you, I've got receipts. I have got receipts. So what? It's almost like
I was to say, you see that that's exactly where the gaslighting and the angry black woman is then pushed in your face, where you said, look, I'm not only, I've told you, I've given you my argument, but now you've questioned my credibility, because I've told you and I've given you an example, exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, how it happened. And then you're telling me, aren't you a bit angry?
Oh, no, do you not think you're overthinking it? Do you not think you're overthinking
it? Can you calm down?
Yes.
Are you maybe?
Can you calm down?
Yes, let's just take 5 minutes. Let's just take 5 minutes to calm down.
Can we calm down here? Can you calm down? Yeah,
and
exactly.
And
and you know, every time they're saying it, it's making me more and more annoyed on the inside.
And that's exactly the point where I think a lot of us have to, and in the course of my life, I've learned, but it's very difficult. That's where you have to learn to control yourself and not give into it, because the moment you get angry when they ask you to calm down is the moment you've lost.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part, because when you get into these serious conversations and you're trying to say, well, look, I know I don't work in HR, but I have enough friends who've explained situations to me. And it's like, well, when you get to that point and you're feeling angry and you're trying to explain to somebody and they're questioning your judgment, your credibility, as Shereen says, how can that not be passive racism? Because if somebody else of a different color, of a non-black person came and started to add a couple of tears, this would be a real issue.
Oh my God. Pull out. It'd be pulling out all the stops.
Different reaction.
Oh, completely
It'd
different.
be a different reaction, you know. It
completely
was
different reaction.
Yeah, and because it's happened to me and I'm in HR, it's just the kind of, I can't tell you, when it's an accumulation of experiences, I can only amplify and multiply how much worse it must be for people who have more layers of differences than I do. And I don't, from my experience, there are some people who think like that, but not everybody is conscious of this all the time. So they don't prioritize their actions that way. But yeah, just, you know, when your white colleague is taken seriously because they've dropped some tears after being microaggressional and after, you know, respecting you and everything that you're doing that is right, you know, if you just read and educate yourself, it's right, and then you're the one that's told to calm down. Yeah, actually, are we justified to lose our head? Are we justified to be angry? I
No, but it's
absolutely
a
think
power.
so, but the problem is when you're in a white space.
You can't do that. But the thing is as well, and I'm just conscious of the time, so we're probably going to finish in like 2 minutes, but I just want to say, because it's a power thing. That's how we are controlled. That is how we are controlled, because when somebody tells you, as black people, and they say to you, don't get so aggressive. Oh God, you scare me when you get upset. What the fuck? What they do is they deny you your right to be angry. They deny you. So what happens is we bottle it up and then we back off. And I think that's why a lot of people are, I think that's why a lot of us now, particularly in the professional or the corporate space, are now, it's like the lid has been lifted off, because we've just recognized how many times we've done that. And as I said before, you know, when as white people, they it's not like they're thinking that they probably have no idea how much pain we're in, but they don't care, because they're only thinking about their position of comfort.
And I was going to say, it's also that language as well. You know, the one thing we all try to avoid is being the angry black woman, right?
Yep.
If a non-black woman is the same, then she's feisty. She's got an edge.
She's fiery. She's just, you know.
And that's also that compression. That's also that compression, that pressure that you put under. And that's what they're not exploring, is that before you write a single email when you are annoyed, you always have to make sure you don't come across as the angry black woman, because you know that same email will be put on someone's desk and say, see, she's angry. Not she's justified. Not she was right. The process was wrong. I made a mistake. But you see, she's angry.
And this is the and the following sentences. No, and the following sentences. This is how black people don't help themselves, or the best one. Yeah, or the best one is, this is why we don't have more black people in our business. And for anybody who wants to come at me and say, like, don't at me on this, because let me tell you, I've got receipts, right? I've got receipts. Don't come up, don't push me. I've got receipts, right? I've got
stories for days.
What I'm saying. I've got receipts. So don't, because I've had all of that. You know, people going, oh, Shereen, your videos are great, but, you know, are you just exaggerating to prove a point?
No.
Let me not swear too much.
This is everyday real life trauma. And I mean, this may be a completely different segment and argument, but the mental health and the resulting physical health impact of constantly having to tone police yourself, get tone policed, constantly questioning whether what you're saying is polite enough, is softened enough, is toned down enough, so that it doesn't hurt the feelings or be misunderstood as you being angry or assertive. Because actually you're being assertive, you're saying things the way they are, but you know, you are deemed as the one being inappropriate, as being the angry person. And you know, of course, you're brown and it's angry, you've really upset my feelings. And I'm like, no, I've been there, done that. I just can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. I'd rather be unemployed, have to live in an ashram, serve other people, but I don't want to work in spaces like that anymore. And I think this is the critical point that we're at, is that at least there's more than one person speaking up, and the stories are matching in the ways that they would obviously match, because they are reality of these experiences exist, you know. It's just that they are undermined.
Yeah,
but I
Leanne,
think
the final. We got 30 seconds, so make it quick, my darling, because I'm
no,
tired.
you go. No, it's okay. No, you wrap up. Go on.
No, you're
You
final. You wrap up.
No,
You're wrapping up.
all I was gonna say is it's time for leadership to no longer question policy, but to personally police themselves. There's no point in trying to build policies if the person who's putting it in place doesn't believe it. There's absolutely zero point. We can talk about policy procedure, we can talk about inclusion, we can talk about diversity, but if all of these people, when you ask them, would they ever have a black cleaner? If they say yes, but inside they're going hell no, then you already got your answer.
I mean, it's not even a black cleaner. Would you have a black boss? And would the next five people that you work with in different companies, would you be okay if they were black? If every single person was black? Let me tell you what the answer is. I don't care what anybody is going to say.
No.
And on that note, thank you very much, ladies. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely. It was
Thank you,
awesome.
Leanne. Lovely speaking with you.
You too. Bye, Sabah.
Bye.